My friends, a great Monday to all of you, Lions Nation. Take a deep breath, because what we saw yesterday wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. From the very first snap, you could feel that something was different. The energy, the focus, the intensity. It was as if this team had rediscovered its soul, its purpose. After weeks of ups and downs, the Detroit Lions went back to playing like the Detroit Lions we believe can beat anyone. And listen, it wasn't luck, it wasn't coincidence, it was identity, it was command. Every play seemed to carry weight, every drive had a reason to exist. It was the kind of performance that makes every fan stop and think, that's it, that's the team I recognize. So before we dive into the full breakdown, smash that like button to show your support, because what happened in this game deserves to be shouted loud and clear. And of course, I want to hear from you too. Drop a comment saying, "Go Lions, I believe," because today, more than ever, that phrase hits different. Now hold on, because what's coming next might just prove that something big is starting in Detroit. You could feel it from the very first drive. This wasn't just another Sunday for Detroit. The Lions looked like a team that had rediscovered its soul, its rhythm, its edge. After weeks of frustration and inconsistency, they delivered what might be their most complete performance in years. Every possession seemed to carry a purpose. Every play had intent, and behind all of it, quietly but decisively, stood Dan Campbell, play sheet in hand, headset on, looking every bit the mastermind we didn't know he could be. It turns out Campbell wasn't just managing the game, he was calling it. No leaks, no whispers, no hint of it before kickoff. But there he was, taking full control of the offense, injecting life into a unit that had looked sluggish for nearly a month. And the result? A Detroit Lions team that didn't punt once. Let that sink in. They scored on every possession until the final drive, when they simply took a knee. It was efficient, balanced football, the kind we've been waiting to see. For weeks, fans were questioning what had gone wrong with the offense. After averaging just 21 points over the previous 3 games, the same group that once dominated opponents suddenly looked unsure of itself. The run game couldn't find traction. The passing attack lacked layers and creativity. There was no rhythm, no tempo, no identity. But on this day, something changed. Detroit mixed deep shots with crisp short routes, leaned into play action, and opened running lanes that had been closed for too long. It was like watching a completely different team, or maybe, the team we always believed this could be. And then came that moment late in the game. Jared Goff walked over to Dan Campbell, put an arm around him, and said something simple, "Good job." Campbell replied, but Goff didn't let it go. He looked him in the eyes and said again, "No, good job." You could read the emotion in that exchange, the recognition that something had clicked. This wasn't just a head coach and quarterback working together. This was a partnership being sealed, a shared understanding that the future of this offense might have just taken a new shape. It's funny to think about how all of this started. For months, the belief was that John Morton would follow the same structure Ben Johnson built before leaving. Campbell's offense, Morton's play sheet, a continuation of what worked. But as the weeks went by, that connection felt off. The spark was missing. So Campbell stepped in and did what leaders do when things start to drift. He took ownership. When asked afterward why he made the change, his answer was pure Campbell, direct, unpretentious, and a little bit wild. "Let's try something a little different," he said. "I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it. I just wanted to change things up. Maybe give us a little rhythm." A little rhythm? The man completely transformed the unit overnight. For all the talk about Washington's defense being a sieve, the Lions still had to execute, and they did, with surgical precision. Sustained drives, creative calls, perfect balance between aggression and control. The offense had purpose again, and it all flowed from a coach who clearly knows his players better than anyone else. And that's the part that should excite every Lions fan right now. What if Dan Campbell isn't just the emotional engine of this team? What if he's actually one of the sharpest offensive minds in football, hiding behind the gritty players coach label we've all attached to him? Because if that's true, if what we saw wasn't a one-time spark but a glimpse of what's coming, the Lions may have stumbled into something every franchise dreams of, a head coach who is also an elite play caller. Think about the stability that brings. Look at Andy Reid in Kansas City, Sean McVay with the Rams, Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, coaches who build offensive systems that don't crumble every time a coordinator leaves. Campbell might just be that kind of leader for Detroit. No more worrying about who's next in line to run the offense. No more wondering if the identity shifts every offseason. This could be the foundation of something long-term, sustainable, and real. And you could feel that energy in the way the players responded. The sideline had life again. The rhythm was back. Even the details, the crisp motion, the sequencing of plays, the way Detroit kept defenses off balance, everything felt intentional. The Lions didn't just outscore Washington, they outthought them, outprepared them, and out-executed them. Then there was the fun little twist, the silver pants. After sticking to the blue-on-blue and white-on-white combinations that had almost become superstition, Detroit finally brought back the classic look, the Honolulu blue paired with those silver bottoms that so many of us grew up watching. Maybe it's silly, but seeing the team look like the Lions we remember, and winning in those uniforms, just hit differently. It felt right, like some kind of football karma finally balanced itself out. So here we are. The Lions are 6-3, their offense looks alive again, and their head coach might be evolving into something far more dynamic than anyone expected. The energy around this team feels renewed. The confidence is real, and maybe, just maybe, we're witnessing the moment where everything starts to fall into place for the long haul. But here's the question I can't stop thinking about, and I want to hear from you on this. After watching that performance and seeing Dan Campbell take over the play calling, do you believe he should keep that role moving forward? Because if what we saw against Washington was a preview of what's coming next, then this might be the start of a new era in Detroit. Think about how many years this franchise has searched for consistency, not just flashes of greatness, but a foundation, a blueprint, something that lasts beyond one hot season or one lucky playoff run. That kind of stability starts when the head coach and quarterback are completely in sync, and right now, that's exactly what Dan Campbell and Jared Goff appear to be building. You could sense it in every drive. Campbell wasn't calling plays like a coach trying to prove a point. He was calling them like a man who knew exactly what his players needed at every moment. He trusted his line to dominate up front. He trusted Goff to read the defense and adjust. He trusted his playmakers to create in space. And for the first time in weeks, it felt like the offense was dictating terms instead of reacting to them. That's the difference between a good team and a dangerous one. And let's be honest, this didn't happen by accident. Campbell's fingerprints have been all over this offense since the day he arrived. His influence is in the physicality, the tempo, the relentless drive to impose their will on defenses. What changed on Sunday was that he took total control of that vision. You could see him on the sideline with the headset on, flipping through the play sheet, keeping his composure but completely locked in. It was calculated aggression, the kind of controlled chaos that makes the Lions so fun to watch when they're at their best. There's a lot of talk around the league about offensive gurus, but most of those guys are system builders. They design a scheme and hope their players can fit it. Campbell, though, seems to be something different. He doesn't build a system around concepts. He builds one around people. He knows his team. He knows their mentality, and that makes all the difference. When he said after the game, "I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it," that wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. It was a coach who finally saw that if the Lions were going to find their true offensive identity, it had to come directly from him. That's what makes this so fascinating. If Campbell truly leans into play calling long term, the Lions could have the kind of continuity that every other franchise envies. Look at Kansas City. Andy Reid's system is Andy Reid. It doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. The same is true in San Francisco under Shanahan. Those teams don't panic when a top assistant leaves because their core philosophy doesn't change. If Campbell becomes that for Detroit, this organization could finally break free from the constant cycle of rebuilding, retooling, and relearning every few years. It's a huge deal for Jared Goff, too. Quarterbacks thrive on trust, and it's clear that Goff feels that with Campbell. You could see it in his body language, his command of the offense, his comfort at the line of scrimmage. There was confidence again, not just in himself, but in the process. And when a quarterback and a head coach are reading from the same script, that's when special things start to happen. That's when game plans turn into statements. Of course, there's still a long way to go. One dominant performance doesn't erase the growing pains this team went through earlier in the year, and the schedule ahead won't make things easy. But what it does show is that Detroit has answers, and that's something not every team can say right now. The play calling, the execution, the discipline, it all looked connected again. And that's exactly what you want to see from a team that's trying to take the next step from contender to legitimate threat. And you know what else is interesting? The timing of all this. This isn't week 2 or week 3. This is the heart of the season, where playoff positioning starts to take shape. Teams that find themselves now are the ones that survive December. The Lions are 6-3, sitting in a strong spot, and if Campbell continues to call games with this level of precision, this offense could peak at exactly the right time. Even small details, like the uniform choices, felt symbolic. The silver pants, the classic look, it wasn't just nostalgia. It felt like a subtle nod to the roots of this franchise. A reminder of who the Lions are supposed to be: tough, proud, built on tradition but ready for something new. They brought that energy back, and you could feel it everywhere, in the crowd, in the locker room, in the way the players carried themselves after the game. Dan Campbell has always preached identity. For years, it's been about toughness, grit, and unity. But now, he's adding something more: intelligence, creativity, balance. That's what separates good teams from great ones. The Lions have always had heart. Now they're showing they can have brains, too. And maybe that's what makes this moment so important. It's not just about one win. It's about the message it sends, that the Lions can adapt, can evolve, and can win in different ways. That when things stop working, this team doesn't crumble or panic. It adjusts, it learns, it grows. So now the question becomes, if this version of the Lions offense continues to shine under Campbell's leadership, could we be witnessing the birth of a new era, one where Detroit doesn't just compete for a year or two, but builds something that lasts for a decade? If you believe in that vision, if you see what's happening and feel that same energy, then make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Dan Campbell should remain the offensive play caller going forward? Let's talk about it, Lions fans. The conversation's just getting started, because that's what this moment feels like, the start of something that could reshape the identity of this entire franchise. For decades, the Detroit Lions have been chasing stability, chasing leadership, chasing a formula that lasts. And now, with Dan Campbell steering the ship in every sense of the word, you get the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they found it. When you watch how the players respond to him, it's different. It's not just respect, it's belief. They trust him, not only to lead but to understand what makes them tick. And that's what made this performance so striking. It wasn't about one explosive play or one lucky break. It was about execution, rhythm, and buy-in. Every single player knew the plan and trusted it, from the offensive line creating massive holes to the receivers finding space with sharp route adjustments. That's not just play calling, that's connection. And Campbell, in his own way, has always understood connection better than most. He's not the kind of coach who hides behind analytics or ego. He's hands-on, honest, and unafraid to make adjustments when something isn't working. That's leadership. That's how you build a culture that can weather any storm. And in this game, taking over the play